today we're going to be talking about data, and I know that sounds really flashy and exciting, but as you know, I have a very unique job as the arts education reporter. I don't know of anyone else who has that title, just in general. But when I'm out in schools and I'm talking to young kids, aspiring artists, and I'm talking to teachers and school leaders, there are a lot of different ways that people are working to make the case for arts education. And you know, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, art's often on the chopping block, so there's a lot of that case that comes forward. And you know, there are a lot of different ways to talk about that, you know, enrichment in preparing students for careers and being creative workers in the future. But through this past year and a half that I've been covering this very specific world, I've heard more and more about data and about districts and on a state level, individuals working to collect data to figure out what's going on the ground so that there can be more access to arts education. And so right now in the state, we have a big database that's available, and we have a project underway in LA County right now to collect more data. And so that's why I wanted to get everyone here today, to make sure that we know that these things are going on, and to try to get the conversation started, you know, even more, because there's a lot of work going on in data. So we want to kind of dissect that today. So I want to start by bringing up our first two guests, Pat Wayne and Denise Grandy. You'll just join me on the stage. Pat is with Create California, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that is in a moment. And Denise Grandy is head of arts education. Pat, you can be here. For the LA County Arts Commission. So I want to also just first start by kind of getting a sense of who we have in the room. Could you raise your hand if you are a school leader or a district level person? Okay. If you are an arts educator, okay. Parents. Okay, cool. And I don't know, just listeners. What are the other categories? Community arts providers, community leaders, nonprofit. Funders, great. Okay, a lot of people there. Well, again, thank you all for being here. And I want to just jump in with Pat, because a story that I was covering in the fall was about a big database that is online now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how it works in a moment. But can you talk about a little bit Create California, what that is, and how data fits into the work that you do?
Yes, I can. Let's see. So Create California is a collective impact model. And you may or may not be familiar with that term, but it came about very organically in California when our state superintendent asked a team to go to the Education Leadership Institute in Chicago in 2011. And that team was led by Melissa Shriver and Craig Cheslog, his right-hand guy. And they came back on fire and coined the term Create California to represent putting arts and creativity at the core of our curriculum, so that schools become creative incubators that kids can't wait to get to every day. And which of us wouldn't want that? So after that happened, our state superintendent asked the team to put together a blueprint for creative schools. And so through a series of meetings, and over 100 arts education leaders, educators, nonprofits were involved in that document. And it's now online on our website. But it's 45 pages and over 70 recommendations. So they went through a little bit of structuring, where the Hewlett Foundation very astutely helped them do a strategic arts plan by funding that process. And through that, they formed a 15-person steering committee and decided to hire a program director. So I came on in February of 2015. So the blueprint was all done, but we very quickly realized we needed to prioritize. And one of the top priorities was we need the data. You know, without the data, you're just another person with an opinion, and what it gets measured gets managed. That's a Peter Drucker quote. So we set about applying to the National Endowment for the Arts for a big grant to pay for us to go out and find the data. We did get that grant, but lo and behold, we discovered that there was a project already underway called the Arts Education Data Project. And it's kind of a long story of how that came about. It was an 8-year process. But the bottom line is that a research company in New Jersey called Quadrant created a user-friendly web platform that's color-coded, so anybody, like me, could go on there and quickly understand the data for their region all the way down to the school level. And so New Jersey was having amazing results. They're up to 98% access to arts education. And so we got into conversation with them, and the stars aligned, and they decided to do a first cohort of 4 states: Ohio, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and California.
So we have this database now, and I want to just take people through it a little bit. I don't know how many people have seen it on Create California. Okay, so a good number, but I want to take people through. So this allows you to look at, and this is secondary data, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but this is looking at grades 6 through 12 in the state, and looks at the course offerings that are offered during the day in school and that are actually coded and reported to the Department of Education. So this is a slice of what's happening. There is more, and that's what we'll talk about later. But I want to take us through the website a little bit. Oh, I have this. I forgot. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you log on, and these are all the schools that are in California secondary level, and then you see the number of students, and then we see the number of students that are enrolled in the arts, and that looks like just over a third there. And then there are more than 100,000 students who have no access at their school, being provided at the school. And I just think it's important to put that into context, because we do have a specific education code in the state that makes those numbers have a slightly different meaning. So you can also go in and see at the county level. So this I just put in LA County, and the numbers are very similar there. It's still, it was 38 before, now it's 39%. And so you can scroll through the site and you can see how that's broken down by discipline, by grade level, and all of that. So it's a really interesting tool. And so Denise, I'm just gonna bring you in now, and let's just remind people about the education code and what that actually says that students should be getting in schools.
So there are 2 parts of the California Education Code. That one of them says that all students in the elementary grades shall receive instruction in dance, music, theater, and visual arts. And then for the high school, middle school and high schools, the code reads that all students shall have access to coursework in those 4 arts disciplines. So the challenge has been not to make the policy, but how do we track where arts education really is happening and it is not happening. I think it's one angle of trying to enforce or see which school districts and schools are following the education code and which are not.
Right. So it's interesting if you look at the findings from this database, 97% of students at the secondary level had some access. But then when you look at it through the lens of the law, where you're actually supposed to have access to all 4 disciplines, it's only 26% at that point. And it's really interesting to see how that all breaks down. So tell us some of the other major findings from that work.
Well, one of the things we're really concerned about is equity. That it wouldn't be okay that one school is teaching students how to read and the school up the street is not. Or the school up the street puts 500 children into a multi-purpose room and they hear someone read to them and they call that reading. That's kind of the lens I've been using, because if arts are core, if they're a part of the core curriculum, that's really how we need to hold that. That's the container we need to think about. In our state, there is a disproportionate, unusually high disproportionate number of students of color who are, for whatever reason, and there are several, prevented from accessing or participating in the arts. So that is also not in fulfillment of the Ed Code, and I think that takes on real importance when you think about where the jobs are going, because we need to be graduating creative thinkers, and the arts and the processes of the arts are a very powerful way to accomplish that. The other number I would just mention is that New Jersey, their participation goals, which they are very close to, are 100% of elementary students. We're at 38. 100% of middle school students, and 50% of high school. So we are right now discussing what our participation goals need to be in California. And you have to remember we have 4 arts disciplines and a 5th if you count digital media, media arts.
Right, so New Jersey was, kind of one of the first states to take this on, head on, and to say, let's figure out what's going on in the schools. That informed the plan that they were able to make for their schools, and they're really starting to get there. And I just have a couple other slides here. This looks at the whole state, and you can see the blue is higher participation.
Above the state average.
Above the average. So that's interesting to look at. And then on the right side is by discipline, that's visual art. And so you can see how different enrollment goes. The AP art history classes are a little lower. And then also enrollment by gender, which is interesting. Pretty even there. And then I know another one of the main findings was that participation at the middle school level was particularly low in California. And that was interesting to me because I've kind of heard anecdotally the term arts education deserts used in reference to middle school. And I know that that's a concern for a lot of district leaders. So it's interesting to have those numbers to say, wow, there's something going on here. It's lower across the board in the work that the Arts Education Data Project has done, but in our state, it's particularly low.
And I think that really is an issue in the world of education, because you think about articulation, what a child should be learning at kindergarten in an art form all the way up through 12th grade. So that really puts the high schools either at a disadvantage, or you see less students of color in those programs because in middle school parents went and found private instruction, some other way for their child to get that discipline.
Right, so now we have this database, and why was it so important to have it online and to be, kind of easily searchable?
Well, I think making it, it's as a tool for advocacy and for equity, it really puts the information right into the hands of parents, teachers, and administrators. And by organizing the information for you this way, where it's color-coded, if you hover over anything with your cursor, a little window pops up and tells you exactly what you're looking at. So, and it breaks down the disciplines as well. You can really see the impact on dance and theater in our state because there was no theater credential till recently.
So as we mentioned earlier, this is part of the picture of what's going on in arts education in our state. This is at the secondary level. These are classes that are provided in school by teachers at the school. So there are some things that are not captured in this, and that's where Denise, we have a project going, in LA County, there's an initiative going on right now to try to fill in some of the missing parts in that picture.
So the LA County Arts Education Profile launched on March 1st, and it will be open until April 28th. And we're hoping that as many of the 2,200 schools in LA County as possible complete that survey to give us a really clear picture of where the arts are being taught in all of the schools. From the LA County Arts Commission's point of view, we are collecting data for three primary reasons, or three reasons. The first, and what I think is one of the most important, is to allow school districts to use this data, so they input what's happening in their district, and they get that data back to help inform their own planning for making gains and providing more arts education over time. So it's really important to us that it is seen as a tool that is usable for the school districts. The second reason that we're looking to collect this data is to have a really clear picture of where and what arts are happening. And we're hoping that this really serves as a baseline for showing progress over time. Arts for All is the countywide collaboration that's been working for 15 years now to make the arts core in K-12 public education. And this new arts education profile is going to be the new baseline for measuring how arts education is or is not increasing over time. And then the third reason that we're embarking on this countywide effort is to surface findings, trends, information that could inform our work. I mentioned we've been at this for 15 years, but what kind of information is maybe not on our radar that might help us over the next few years achieve scale sooner than 15 more years? And the three parts of data that the profile is particularly gathering that are not included in the state project are, one, of course, the elementary school picture. Two, any instruction that's happening in the general classroom, so any integrated arts instruction. We want to make sure that the schools have an opportunity to represent that work. And then also, we all know that the nonprofit arts community plays a big role in LA County in supporting arts education in our schools. So making sure that they have a way, or that schools have a way of representing those partners.
Right, of course, arts integration is a big push right now because it's sometimes more reasonable for schools to do that, to work music or theater into other subjects with a teaching artist, to have a community partner come in. So that's and I think it's interesting because that seems to be kind of informed by some other research that LA County Arts for All did in the past, looking at those partnerships. And is it 35% or around there, that 35% of the arts in schools in LA County that is coming from partners? I think it's something like that.
I don't remember that stat.
It was a lot.
I remember that there are 186 arts partners or teaching artists that participated in that survey. And I think it was all but 2 school districts at the time were using arts partners, community arts partners, as part of that work. And the 2 school districts at that time that were not already using community partners actually have since joined Arts for All and now are doing that.
Yeah, and we have seen other, just since I've been on this beat, I've seen, kind of other data collection projects that have moved the needle on this. LA Unified and their Arts Equity Index, which gave schools a letter grade based on the amount of arts that they were providing in schools, and that got really a lot of attention. And that, on the equity issue, was used by the district to determine which schools got a certain amount of money from the district. So Rory Pullins could not be here today, but that is another example of a district doing that. But this, kind of rallying together, I'm interested to see what the picture will look like, because we have so many districts. We have LAUSD, in LA County, but we also have tiny districts.
So there are 81 school districts in LA County. The smallest school district has 94 total students enrolled. That's in Gorman, in the furthest north part of our county. And then, of course, LA Unified is our largest, with just under 650,000 students. But knowing that our public school population in the county is right between 1.5, 1.6 million students, LA Unified is, of course, the biggest, the second largest in the nation. But even outside of LA Unified, there are 1 million other students in public schools across the county. The other point I want to make, too, is the distinction between access and actually having arts education. So this is particularly, I think, important in the high school levels, because if we think about K-12 instruction all the way across the board, there are certain subjects that you just take all the time, elementary through. And then when you get into the secondary grades, there are more opportunities for more electives. So at the high school level, access right now is being counted as, are those courses offered? Are they available for students to take? But some of our high school districts in LA County that have done a deep dive into their own district data have found that even though they're offering all of those courses, they're finding that a higher percentage of higher socioeconomic students are taking those courses. Of course, English language learners are sometimes blocked from taking those courses because they're required to take additional tutorial subjects. So I think the question of access, the starting place is you can't have access if it's not even offered. But then drilling down even deeper, once the courses are offered everywhere, how do we really make sure that all students are able to take those courses and enroll in them?
Right. So this is a first step, right? a lot more work to do. We're going to bring up some more guests in a moment to get a look at kind of the difference that having this information can make in a district's arts plan. But just want to pause for a moment and ask if anyone in the audience has any questions. Actually, before that, I'm going to ask another question to Denise. How can districts get involved if they want to create the arts ed profile?
So we have sent communications out to all principals, all 2,283 principals in LA County with a link to the survey. We're encouraging parents, community advocates, anyone in this room or anyone listening to go to their neighborhood school or their child's school or the school that they graduated from and encourage them to participate in the profile. The more schools that participate, the better the countywide snapshot will be. We know that we have about 12 school districts that have already completed it. So what is that? Another 69 to go. But the more everyone can stress the importance and go to their local school and make sure that they're participating, I think the better the data.
And we do have some sheets that are in the back at a table if you want to get any more information about that. And any questions from the audience? We have a couple. Someone will come to you with a microphone. And we will be getting into more specifics with our other guests.
Hi, I just wondered if the data includes charter schools.
Pat, you want to?
Yes, it does. And there is actually a filter on there that you can look at those specifically as a group.
Yeah, you're able to sort by traditional charter. We have some other, okay.
As you made reference to federal funding and other funding for arts education is under attack currently, and a lot of arts support groups have, over the years, cited other educational benefits to other areas of study in the curriculum that are helped by participation in the arts. As far as I can follow what you presented today, the data that you're describing here is all basically a head count, yes or no, are these kids participating in arts? And then I noticed one slide showed the names of different courses, but I wasn't able to read that fast enough. Can you say anything about other kinds of data you're collecting that might help make the case to skeptics?
So there is research on the value of arts education to children. That's number one, and that's really robust on the Arts Education Partnership. Did I get that right? Yeah. If you just Google Arts Education Partnership, anything you want to know, attendance, test scores, it's all there. But in California, what's encouraging to me, despite what we might fear could happen in the future, is the local control funding formula for school districts. So it's your school board, your local school board, who's deciding on the expenditure of their money. And because we're really beating the drum about the ed code and equity, those are two motivators, I think, to help a school administrator kind of figure out how do they tackle this. On the data, you can see the breakdown by arts discipline. So if you were looking at your district, you could see every individual school, and that really points up equity, because one school could be in the blue, and the school across the other side of the district is in the orange, meaning they're way below the state average, the deeper the orange. So that all by itself is where some meat is in terms of what do we do about this, how do we, I just heard from a school district who only one of their 6 high schools had a theater department. So any kid in the district who wanted theater was trying to get in there to switch schools, and the new superintendent said, oh my gosh, this is an equity issue. We need every school to have a high school to have a good theater department. So that's the power of the data. I think the other thing on the site that's worth looking at is the number of courses offered, and where it'll show you the most popular course all the way down to the ones that have the fewest number in. I was talking to a student, and she said they just started digital media at her school, but they offered one class, so 30 kids got it, and there were hundreds that wanted to take it. So there's another issue in the stepping into the modern age. You know, what are we offering? Are we allowing students to have a voice in what is being offered in the arts? And so you'll see on there one of the arts categories is AME, which is arts, media, and entertainment.
Okay, we'll just take a couple more questions before we move on.
Just a quick question about the process for this new data, because as we've seen in the past, not every data immigration has really shown everything for that school. The Arts Equity Index is a great start, but not every principal wrote on there exactly what they had for many different reasons. So is there any way for partner orgs like us that come in and bring the arts education in many schools to be a check and balance for the data that's coming in?
Yeah, Denise.
So one thing is know that the survey is open now, and so be sure that the schools that you're working in are aware of it and are completing it and are listing you as partners. There's a place where they can list their community partners, and they can specify that visual arts is being taught in second grade to some second grade students or all second grade students. So for any community partners, be sure to be advocates on that. The other piece, the other question was around the inclusivity of the data. I lost my train of thought on that. My apologies. It'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what's kind of interesting about having this conversation right now, is because this is the start, right? You know, there's still a lot to add to the picture. And I think that's what's interesting about the shift toward the numbers, you know, toward the kind of figuring out the enrollment is just it's a different piece. It's a different piece from what I've heard, you know, that is more focused on, you know, the benefits of music in the brain, you know, kind of that type of research and that type of information. But I think allowing districts to see more what is going on in schools is just another piece, you know? It's just another part of the picture. Oops, sorry. And yeah, okay. Let's do
Can I
two
grab my
quick
other
things,
thought?
and we will have lots of more time for questions at the end, but I want to make sure we get to our next two guests.
So the other part of my thought was that it's clear that as any system that's external to the ed system is going to have limited ability to collect data on that system. So there's, and no data collection system is going to be perfect. We know that even the state data that school districts submit to the state, we know that there are flaws in it, but it is the most comprehensive data that we have to date. There is currently a bill in the state put forward by Assemblyman Kamsen Chu out of San Jose. It's AB 385 that is calling for statewide data collection in the arts at the elementary level. If that makes its way through the Assembly and the Senate and is signed by the governor, that would then mandate schools, or I shouldn't use that word, but will be a stronger leverage point for schools to actually submit this data. When it goes through the California Department of Education, there's a stronger motivation for those schools to submit it because it's often tied to their funding. So I think all the way across the board, as the County Arts Commission or any nonprofit, over time, having the data collection be part of the statewide system instead of something that's external imposed on the system is going to be in our best interest. And I think that our greatest hope that with LA County being 25% of the student population of the state, if we can do it here, then there's no question that it can operate in the statewide scale. So this effort is really, as I like to think of it, as a proof of concept, that if we can make it work in LA County, then wouldn't it be great if we could just hand it over to the state and have it be part of annual reporting, just like they get annual reporting on all K-12 education.
Okay, hold on to your questions. I want to bring up our next two guests, Michael Despars and Veronica Lizardi. Just come on up. Michael Despars is president-elect of the California Educational Theater Association, and he's also a teacher in the Fullerton Joint Union, so many words, Fullerton Joint Union High School District, and Veronica Lizardi is with Downey Unified. Veronica, I want to start with you. So we were just talking with Denise about this data collection initiative going on in LA County right now, and Downey Unified was one of the pilot districts that went through this earlier as they were working out all the systems and collecting this data. So tell us, and we have actually some of the numbers that reported, but what was it like going through this process for your district, and what surprised you?
So first of all, as we started our strategic master plan as a district a few years ago when the local control accountability plan came into place. And one of the smart things our district did was kind of go back as a district with a lot of our stakeholders and really worked on who are we? What do we stand for? And we created our strategic master plan at the same time that the LCAP was coming in with the new local control funding formula. So that has set the stage for a lot of the things that we do in Downey Unified. And when we came across with the arts, we went back to our strategic master plan that really states that we believe that our students will graduate with a 21st century education, that they will be able to be college and career ready, globally competitive, and citizens of strong character. We began to do the work with the Arts for All group and began with the data piece. And when we looked at our data, it's not that we don't do the arts, but what was neat to see just where were our pockets of excellence and where were our pockets where we knew we needed to look and say, why is there not enough there? And that was really eye-opening for us. And we created a group of our stakeholders as well. We have parents and teachers and administrators that are really passionate about the arts. And again, when we looked at our data, what was neat to see is, yes, we have some needs, but we have a lot of amazing educators, parents, as well as administrators who are so passionate and want to help create a plan that will begin to fill some of those gaps that we saw.
So starting different conversations with all of the stakeholders. I want to take a look at, so this was just one of the general arts instruction summary that came out of that analysis with the Arts for All. And so it's always alarming, and it was one of the questions that I got when I was doing reporting initially on Create California and the database was like, wow, the zeros, those are really, intimidating. What do we do for those zeros? And it's just interesting when you're starting from this baseline, in data collection, because it's like, did you know, Veronica, did the district realize that there was zero dance,
No, I think, and with our committee, we were like, wow, when you start to ask kind of what everyone's doing, it was a little bit alarming. And I myself am a huge dance advocate. It was even more alarming for me to see that personally. But again, Pat mentioned earlier, and our superintendent, Dr. Garcia, always says, what gets measured gets improved. Right. And that has been part of our process. Like I said earlier, when we began our local control accountability plan, it has been a constant going back to what does our data say. So with this piece, when we started to look at this with our committee and our two wonderful facilitators, Sandy and Adela, who come from the Arts for All, have really guided us to really look at our strategic master plan we have in place and how will we get our students to be globally competitive. This is part of that. I've always shared to teachers or parents or even our own administrators, for me, the arts was my in. I was able to attain a dance scholarship to the university I wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. And some people go, wow, you can get a dance scholarship? Yes, you can, just like you can get a sports scholarship. It's part of what we believe in if we want our students to be able to go out there and be competitive with anybody. The arts is part of that.
And Denise, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot of similar feedback from the districts that have already gone through the process of starting those conversations.
Definitely. Important to state that this data is not being collected in any way as a tool for accountability. This is intended to be a support to help districts and schools move forward. And this particular slide, I want to point out, it is the one that most clearly illustrates how the arts education profile is working right alongside the statewide data project. So in the county survey, we do not ask any information that we can already pull down from the California Department of Education website. So this slide here shows what information is being pulled from the CDE data, what information is being pulled from our countywide survey, and how does that create a complete picture K-12 in all 5 arts disciplines.
Okay, I want to pull in our Orange County voice now, Michael Despars. So we kind of alluded to this earlier. The data is not perfect, and is only a start. But what kind of conversations has this started in your district?
We were surprised when we looked at the California Arts Data Project specifically for our district, and I can use my classes as an example. We showed 12 students enrolled in theater courses according to the data on the website. When I know personally, I teach 160. So, so what was only being reported were students who were involved in the IB theater course at the school based on the data that was collected. And so in investigating, we figured out that we had a coding problem. We were miscoding classes. So when you look at our school district, you were seeing arts, media, and entertainment being a major part of our data. And the students that weren't being coded correctly were being placed in the wrong columns. So some of the things that we're doing right now is making sure, number one, we're communicating to everybody involved at the district level about how to code our classes correctly. So we pulled up all of our classes, we looked at all of the codes that get reported, and we assigned codes. We said, if the student is enrolled in this course, this is the code that you are reporting. Because we found that so many students were being reported as students involved in CTE courses that actually weren't being offered. So we just had a miscommunication. So it's kind of put everybody on alert at this point that we want to make sure that we're accurate. We're a high school district, and we have several union high school districts in Orange County, I think Huntington Beach being one of them, and Anaheim Union. And when you compared our districts in terms of what was being reported on the California Arts Data Project website, we looked like we were offering the lowest level when in fact we know that we are competitive, especially in the northern Orange County area. So we're in the process of, number one, correcting the information, getting the correct codes associated with each student enrolled, and then making sure that data is represented accurately. I hate to use the term recruitment, but in Orange County, the arts are a very competitive place, and parents are seeking the best high schools to send their students to, specifically for the arts. So we want to make sure that the data on that website is correct, because if you compared my district with another union high school district as you're making a decision at the 7th and 8th grade year about what high school you'd like to send your students to, especially for those high schools that are open enrollment, you might not choose my district, even though we are offering the depth and breadth of courses in the arts in comparison to a lot of other school districts in the area. Right. So we want to make sure that information is correct so parents have those tools. And I say recruitment is the wrong word because I don't think you should actively have to recruit. But I do think parents need the right tools and the right information, and that is what's being provided. So it's a wake-up call for us to do the right things because we're already offering the right things.
Right. And Pat, I know that you've been going around to a lot of districts, giving trainings on inputting the course codes and everything. But have you heard feedback like that from other districts?
Yeah, it's actually a blessing and a curse in some ways. The blessing is that we could never have taken this on for our entire state if we were responsible for collecting and correcting everybody's data. So the district administrator in charge of submitting the data to the state, it needs to code it correctly. So having that conversation take place at the local level is the blessing, but it's also, if a district isn't paying attention, and Fullerton Union was, they were calling me on the day we launched saying, this isn't right. And I'm like, well, who inputted your codes? So they were so, I'm very proud of them because they were probably my most proactive district. And I'm sure there's others out there. So that's what we're trying to do, is educate people, because we don't want districts just looking and saying, well, this isn't right. And they put it in incorrectly. So the course code list is right, I like to say all roads lead through our homepage. So right on the homepage of the data project is a link to the course codes. The other thing that's there that applies to this conversation and to what Denise was mentioning is a roadmap for districts. First thing, you got your data, how do you make sense of it? So we have a 4-component roadmap that the very first thing is assemble your team to look at your data, and that's exactly what Michael's district did.
And then when is the next update to the site for?
They just submitted their data in October. Then that gets fed back to the district for correction, and the correction window just ended February 1. And so now the data people at the California Department of Ed are messing around with it. That's my technical word. They're messing around with it, and then that will be pulled into our site probably April.
Right, because this is a starting point in creating this website, but it's going to be updated
Every year.
to have a different picture. And Michael, another thing that I wanted to ask you about, Denise touched on this a little bit earlier, but in high school, when you have all of these electives, and the education code said that there should be access to the disciplines at that point. When you're making the case to district leaders, how is it different, do you feel, at the high school level?
I think there's a lot of factors that play in terms of access. Number one, you can have all the access you want. If kids aren't signing up for the courses, they're not going to run the course. And that's the trouble we have, especially as we're coming out of a recession and we're talking about union contracts and decisions that are being made as part of collective bargaining units. If a decision gets made that a class can't run or cannot run unless it's 38-1, that course is not going to run. So you can have all the access you want. We can offer the course every year, but if students aren't signing up for it, that becomes very difficult to run those courses. And then it might look like there is not access. And for the 29 students who signed up, it may look like there is no access. So I think, hopefully as we see statewide education improve, I know that we are looking at some potential budget cuts, and I hope that in the May revise of the budget, we rethink those things at the state level, that class size could be something that we have a conversation about, and that not all classes need to be 30-1, 38-1, that there are some courses that provide access that are beneficial to the whole student, that should not be canceled because of the number of students enrolled in the course. And I know some classes in my district specifically are allowed to run small because of the type of course they are. So I teach the International Baccalaureate Theater Arts course. And my district has allowed that to run at 12 or 50 plus. It just depends on the year and what students are interested in at that moment. But you get a course like technical theater where they're saying absolutely not unless there's 38 students involved. And it's because a technical theater course, in terms of school rankings, is not a course that's necessarily counted, but an IB theater course, in terms of how many students are taking the exams, factor into state and national rankings.
So many factors.
Absolutely.
And Veronica, having looking at elementary schools, it's kind of, I go out and talk to young students all the time, and just planting that seed is so important at that level in terms of access. So.
For our district, we've chosen to begin with our elementary schools because of, just like when we think about our academics as well, we think of prevention, starting the interventions early. So with the arts, we have a lot of wonderful things in place that we thought we would be really successful with all this great information to have a really positive start. And one of the things that we have that we began with our local control funding formula plan was we have a STEAM team. We hired 15 teachers that all have expertise in one of the areas of STEAM. And our 2 arts teachers in that team of 15 are part of our arts committee. So we're looking at how we can do the arts as a standalone in our elementary schools as well as the integration. Because of course, teachers at the elementary level, they teach all the subjects, right? So you add one more thing, so you have to think about how do we, put this in teachers' hands so they're not feeling completely overwhelmed. The other second component, which helps our district in terms of the rollout, we are a Title I district, so we receive categorical funding. All of our elementary schools are Title I. We have 13 elementaries. What's really exciting, and my role is to support the sites with all their categorical funding. What's been challenging in the past is when you receive this funding, it was only designed to be used for reading and math support. And we all know how great the arts are for supporting reading and math, but sites were not allowed to use it based on just how the law is written. With the new Every Student Succeeds Act, beginning next year, we have a little more liberty to use categorical funding for the arts. So we're really looking at how we can restructure just how we've been able to create programs, but with those limited ties with how you can use the funding. And that's always been the struggle for schools. And these are schools that have funding, which not all schools have categorical. So we really feel that starting with our elementary, we will be able to really make some huge gains. And we do support our middle and high schools as well, but our elementaries have kind of been left to figure it out on their own based on funding, fundraising, or the expertise in the building. So if you had a really dynamite teacher that was willing to teach an after-school program, then it was great, but that wasn't across the board.
And that's really where it starts. If you can get the students at the elementary level and we can support those programs, the secondary level becomes so much better. I know specifically our feeder schools had a moment there within the recession where there were no arts courses being offered, and they had to start some community members started some arts programs that came in, and we saw a dip at the high school level within several years that we're just getting out of because the students now have some access at the elementary and middle school level. So starting there, I think, is one of the best ways to support what happens at the end.
Right. We talk a lot about the pipeline in terms of pathways to careers, but of course, from high school to college to a career before high school, the elementary level. So yeah, definitely all connected. Denise?
I just wanted to comment on that also and put it in the equity context. So data that we collected in 2009 and 10 showed us that it validated what I think we all expected, was that even within the same school district, students that attend Title I schools have less access to quality arts instruction than their peers. So even within the same school district, if you live on one side of the tracks versus the other side of the tracks, dramatically affects whether you have the arts. Some of the assumptions about that are where parents are able to fund and supplement government funding for education. They do. So it's a bit anecdotal, but a school district that joined Arts for All 2 years ago joined us. They're a school district that has a pretty amazing award-winning high school arts programs across many of their high schools. But they recognized, and they offered no arts instruction in the elementary levels, sprinkling in the middle schools. And so then how did their students arrive and do this amazing work at high school? Well, it was because the parents in the district who could put their children in private arts classes since kindergarten, and when they went all the way to high school, they were doing amazing work. And the kids from the other side of their track who never had any arts experience never participated in high school. So it was a clear equity issue that those that had the means were getting the arts instruction, and those who didn't.
I just wanted to comment on the discussion about Title I in support of this as well, because our state superintendent, Horlickson, just sent a letter to every superintendent clarifying that they can use their Title I money for arts education in support of the goals of Title I. So if you know that you have Title I schools in your district, in fact, San Diego Unified School District, they have 22 Title I schools. They used all their Title I money to hire teaching artists that were highly trained in partnership with them to go into the elementary schools alongside that general classroom teacher in all the arts disciplines, and the impact on those students catching up and being a part of the regular track, if you will, was phenomenal.
Great. I want to open it back up to questions since I know we had a lot of hands earlier. Any questions? Okay, let's start over here. Coming to you with a mic.
Hi, thank you very much. How about a two-part question? One is, several of you commented about this, the collection of the participation is about supporting the school districts and not about being accountable. Why not? Why not be accountable when it is California code and it's federal code? And then secondly, out of curiosity, nobody has really addressed the issue of evaluation or assessment, that form of measurement, and what the outcomes are, and or the idea of tracking students across time for their arts participation, because I know that's something that's been happening too, is a student who may in fact have taken the recorder program in 3rd grade, that doesn't show anywhere on their file. So it gets lost in terms of recruiting the kid for middle school, for instance.
Okay, so accountability and then tracking. Does Pat or Denise, do you want to address the...
I can start from district level. I know as we're creating our strategic plan for the arts piece, that is a big component for us. So we're looking at how are we going to evaluate our plan. So at a district level, what is great that should happen at all districts is creating those plans, and the accountability piece is important. How will you, again, what gets measured gets improved. So if we don't have those indicators, and part of that process has really come about, excuse me, with the local control accountability plan, because we've had to have indicators for every goal. And so really the state is looking at districts being more locally accountable. So creating those criteria-based indicators of how do you know you did worked? And it's more about that improvement cycle. So you create a plan, you execute it, and how do you know it worked? And if it didn't, what are you gonna do about it? And I think more and more we're really working towards that model, because the previous model was more about, you know, I can't think of the word, but where you get fined, right? If you didn't do it, it was a monetary piece. So your focus was, how do we just get through it so we don't get penalized was the word. It was more of a penalized model. So we are, I believe, in a better mode of a continuous improvement cycle, and being held accountable is important. And so I know, coming from a district, we value having an instrument that allows us to grow and show that progress piece.
And I'll just put that kind of in the national trend context, which in going from the No Child Left Behind, which was a punitive model, to now the Every Student Succeeds Act, which has moved away from the punitive model and more to the continuous improvement. So I think maybe I should not have used the word accountable, but not punitive. How do we acknowledge where we are and move forward and not spend the energy on looking back?
There was a lot of discussion about the color coding on our state map, because it started out red and green, and now it's blue and orange, a kinder, gentler color coding. But there is an accountability piece in those color codes. And I think where we're all at is we didn't want to engineer a public shaming. Instead, we want to be seen as a partner, a proactive partner to improve. So I'm 100% with you about the accountability piece. There should be, and we're getting more vocal about the ed code. We're taking a good look at that about could there be a carrot and maybe a stick to that. We're not sure.
Because
So-
the issue with the education code as it is there it has no teeth. There's no way to really enforce it, and a lot of schools, a lot of school leaders that I talk to don't know about it. So this is, I mean, we're talking about baby steps here. First, we need to know that there's a law. First, kind of step one, and then who is even close to being in alignment with that law is kind of step two.
But intentional to put the information out publicly and to not have it hidden away on a shelf or in some database. We know that public opinion is in large support of the arts. We know that when the local control process started a few years ago, which requires that school districts meet with parents across their district, that the two things that most districts heard most often was wanting more programming in STEM instruction and arts instruction. So by making this data visible, it allows the parents to have a voice. It allows all of us to really have a voice in making our opinions known in terms of what we value for our young people.
Good question.
Okay, another one.
Hi, as an arts instructor who has at various times taught in a coat closet, on a stage in a multi-purpose room while lunch was going on, and under the school bleachers, I wonder if any of the arts ed data that we're tracking has to do with facilities and appropriate infrastructure to offer quality arts ed classes.
Yes, the arts education profile in LA County does ask about where the instruction is taught and allows schools to input whether the music is happening in a multi-purpose room or a facility that's a room specially designed for music instruction. So yes, that was one of the considerations.
And a lot of us are creating strategic arts plans. Specifically in my district, the plan started over a year ago before the data came out, and Pat Wayne definitely did help us create that, or at least secure some funding so we can be able to start that conversation. And one of the things that came up in creating that plan was facility. And that is one of our goals, is making sure that every site has access to appropriate facilities to teach the courses and to allow students to be able to, I want to say perform final product, but which could also be a gallery space. I know my campus has a gallery space now. So we are looking at the data, and sometimes we interpret that data to then create policy, and facilities was one of those things that we had talked about when creating our plan.
If you go, again, that document I referred to earlier, the roadmap, the third component in there is creating a strategic arts plan. Because where we have seen the most progress is in the districts that have done that. So in Orange County, and we were about 2 years behind LA, we now have 26 out of our 28 school districts with arts plans. There's also a link there for you to look at some sample plans. But the approach has been very local for a coach to go into a school district who's very experienced, and there's now a group of those coaches all connected to the California Alliance for Arts Ed, and they raise money to help subsidize the coaching fee, which is what Michael's referring to. And LA is so lucky to have the Arts Commission and the LA County office partnering so closely, because what are you up to, 56 districts?
65 of the 81 school districts in LA County have built an a strategic plan for arts education, plus 4 charter school networks. And if it's a school district in LA County, there is no cost for a facilitator to help develop a local strategic plan. That's something that the Arts for All collaboration provides at no charge to districts.
And the cool thing about that is it meets you where you are. So there's like a teams assembled of about 25 people, and it's a mixed group. There's arts educators, a couple principals, community leaders, not-for-profit arts providers, active in that area, and together you're coached to create your plan. And then the last step is connecting that plan to the LCAP. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we're seeing millions of dollars designated for arts ed.
And I'd like to add to the piece of the outreach, what has helped us in Downey has been our outreach to our stakeholders, and that's part of what I do. I go to every single school site, and as you can imagine, when I'm speaking about getting input for our local control accountability plan, I hear from all departments. And so we can't do this though without that input. And I know when I ask our teachers and staff to give input, I tell them, I promise, we look at it. Because a lot of times we ask for the input, but we then don't get it. We might hear about it, but we have really, I guess my message is utilize the channels of your organizations to provide the input, because we do look at it. I am responsible to write or put together all the data that we gather towards our local control accountability plan, and there is a section that is all about stakeholder input. It's a narrative that I write based on all the surveys and meetings that I facilitate to gather the input. So that is also new in terms of this whole process, is the stakeholder outreach. It's extremely exhausting, but I love it because I get to hear all the ideas. And it really helps facilitate the discussions at the district level when we have that backup to say, this is what our stakeholders are saying. And it's taken us a little while, but we're in year 4 of the LCAP. And so now we have built that trust within our stakeholders, though, that they do see that we hear them. We will take the data from the previous year and we'll show them where it's on our LCAP so they can see this is what we heard and this is how we, adjusted the current LCAP. So that's my message in regards to stakeholder.
And it's very important to get the community involved when they're having those meetings. Sometimes those meetings are announced under the radar and you don't get very much community participation. And what happens in that room as they're talking about how funds are going to be spent for the next 2 to 4 years is directly affected by who's sitting in the room saying arts education is important to us. And so if you don't have those stakeholders sitting in that room, you might see the word arts and VAPA disappear from those LCAPs. So it's very important to contact district offices and ask when they're holding those meetings. I make sure that I inform our stakeholders who are supporters of the arts programs that those things are happening and that they should contact the district office about being involved.
Yeah, I know a lot of stories that I've covered where districts have made, big changes with arts education. When I ask how it started, it has started with an LCAP meeting where a bunch of parents came and really made their voices heard, and then it made a difference. We have time maybe for 2 more questions.
Hi, my question is about access and equity in relation to, I guess, communicating the stuff I hear at this kind of meeting to children and parents. So you do have parents who are very proactive and children who know this is what they want. But even if you have the offering, like you're saying, children may not think it's a valid path. They may not know the benefits, and their parents may not know. So a child may go home excited about a play, and the parent is like, you're not going to get a job with that. So what kind of work are you doing so that this is an important thing to the people who you're trying to help?
Well, one of the things that we say in Downey, we are a people business, right? And it's all about relationships. I believe, and I come from an organization that believes in really going out to our community. So part of it is a lot of FaceTime, talking to parents, talking to students. So when I go do my outreach, last year I did 56 meetings in person with students, with parents, with teachers. And it's really going out there and holding those meetings. In addition to that, we have representatives. So one of my roles has been, we have a parent advisory committee, and we really do our best to recruit from every school 1 to 2 parents. Those parents are key because they come to meetings that we go deeper in the work to inform them of all the programs and that process. They then go back to their school sites because they're also that voice of the school. They come with a passion in terms of being the voice and advocates for those schools. And then obviously through the school administration, I guess you can never do enough is my message. There can't just be, well, I held a meeting. No, it's beyond the meeting. It's really doing that outreach, and parents talk, because when it's really exciting and important to them, they spread the word, and I've seen it happen, and those seeds is how we start to plant them, and then the feedback. So again, going back to relationships and building the trust with the community, then they also do give you feedback. The surveys, although they're not as personable, parents will utilize those as well as students, because we have a student one that we utilize, and we get large numbers of all of our stakeholders doing the same input.
Are people who don't have the time, who work many hours a week, who maybe don't speak the same language. So the majority of your stakeholders aren't going to be the people who participate in this, and the ones who would make their child kind of get involved. So is there a way to pass the message along to those who aren't in this community, who aren't those first to speak up for the arts?
I think that's $1 million question. I mean,
well, we're actually working on something that we hope to have ready by May, and it initiated with PTA asking us for it, which is the Visual and Performing Arts Standards for Parents. And to have it be very friendly and say, here's what your child should be getting in kindergarten in the arts, and here's what that delivers up to them as somebody who's building their skills. And the companion piece to that is all the careers that most parents don't know about, because if what you're thinking is, well, if my child loves theater, they have to be good enough to star on Broadway, and they don't realize that there's hundreds of jobs. And in fact, a quick story, a friend of my son's majored in theater in college, came back during the recession, could not find a job in communications, which was what she was going to do. And got it by just through a fluke into an internship program at Allergan, pharmaceutical company. And she was desperate for doing something. And they had hundreds of kids interning for free because nobody could find a job, even those with a chemistry degree. And at the end, they let every single intern go except for her. And they said, you have all the people skills we're looking for. We'll teach you the medical part of this. It was like, oh my gosh, there it is.
Yeah.
And that's a side thing.
Yeah. And
but there's many jobs directly related.
The creative economy will be kind of the focus of my next event on the 29th. And we'll talk a lot more about all of the jobs that are connected. But I think that's a vital part of the narrative, especially for parents.
Yeah, especially for parents. I think that, one thing we know is that there's not a hostile anti-arts movement happening. Rarely do we say, oh no, bad arts, we don't want to see the arts. We more run into an issue of, yeah, we think it's good, but how do we make it a priority? It's more one of apathy than resistance. So getting the word out about the role of the creative economy as an economic engine, the number of jobs. So we know in LA County, 1 in 6 jobs is in the creative economy. There are 11 industries as part of that. And in addition to those 11 industries, there are 79 creative occupations that cut across all industries. So I think some of that has to do with, one, the messaging and making sure that people are aware of that, but then also one of our challenges moving forward over the next couple of years is to be very concrete in this era of college and career ready in how, starting at middle school and high school, what are those pathways to what jobs, to what creative industry unions or non-unions, and really making it more of a telling the full story in terms of economics and sustaining valid careers.
And it begins directly in the classroom. I emphasize 21st century skills with my students all the time and make sure that they understand those connections. And one of the things that I end every class with is, what did you learn today, and how are you going to apply it outside of here? And I'll ask them questions specifically. We just did scale modeling to look at set designs. How do you use scale in your math class or your history class? And really getting them to think about those things, so then you can come back and emphasize it doesn't matter what career you want to go into. The skills you're developing right now in this class are going to take you into that career and open up those opportunities. So starting in the classroom is very important.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because I got the signal that we have to wrap up. But stealing your line, Michael, of what did we learn today and what are we going to do with it? Let's all think about that. You know, I cover arts education. I think of myself as kind of a little bumblebee moving around, pollinating between different organizations and getting conversations started, because there are so many people working for doing this work in this area. And I don't know that we're all talking to each other all the time. So I hope that we can stick around in this room now, talk to these amazing resources. We have some information about the arts ed profile, and you know, go to createcalifornia.net and look at the database, use that to fuel your conversations. Thank you so much for coming out today and for this great conversation. And I also want to thank KPCC's in-person team. Thank you to all of you for coming, and hope to hear from you soon. Pay attention to my work, because I'll keep telling all of these stories, and I want to hear from you. So thank you all so much.